Family, thanks for joining another episode of Black Gay Table Talk. I'm your host, Keenan, and for today's episode, we have Mr. Derrick Tennial with us, owner and CEO and founder of Rethink the Narrative. Derrick, how are you
I
today?
am well. How are you, sir?
I'm getting there. I'm getting there.
I understand the struggle is real on this Saturday morning.
The struggle is real. So, so tell us what's been going on with you. How are you?
I'm doing well. I've been very busy, but as always, I'm busy. So what's new? Getting ready for the fourth Artist in the Afternoon here in Atlanta. This Artist in the Afternoon is a showcase, if you will, that was created by myself and Phil Esteem of the Esteem Awards and Pride Index several years ago. And so it was very, at first, very impromptu. About a month or so before Black Gay Pride, he gave me a call and said, "Hey, I was thinking about doing this event." And I said, "That's funny. I've already outlined it." And all I had to do was go into my notes and pull it out. And we executed the very first one within a 30-day period. And so the whole premise of the of Artists in the Afternoon is to showcase rising or aspiring authors, artists, poets, painters, any type of artistry. And it can be anyone who is a member, inclusive and
Mhm.
exclusive of the queer community. And so we just happened to launch it during Black Gay Pride, and we're in our fourth year now, and we're getting bigger and better with each year.
I love that. I love that. And actually, thank you too for what you're doing for the community. I mean, it's amazing. And to highlight authors and, in a world now where reading is not happening as much, for us readers, it warms my heart because, we want to hold on to that. And it's not even for nostalgic reasons. It's for, I don't know, it just feels like it keeps you grounded. It keeps you connected to life itself. I mean, we need reading.
The funny thing is, well, this year our theme is writing for our lives. And
Yeah.
that came about as a result of looking at the current socio-political climate in this country. And,
Mhm.
with books being banned and, the school boards and government trying to tell us what we can read and what we can't read, reading and writing has become more important than ever before. And
Yeah.
personally, again, you and I were just talking about how young I am a few minutes ago.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah.
I've always personally, um, because I consider myself, and I have been a late bloomer. I question sometimes whether I was born too early or arrived too late. And so this
Mm.
whole resurgence now with the books being banned and whatnot has made me see that, let's say that books are continued to be banned. Project 2025 takes effect. We've got to
Oh
have some
God.
documentation somewhere of what life, the struggles that we have overcome as Black queer people in this community, in this world. And so it made me all of a sudden say, hey, there is relevance in telling our stories once again. And making sure that we
Hmm.
continue to tell our stories, because we have to leave something for those who are coming behind us. And because there's
I love
always,
that.
the particulars sometimes will go away, but principles always remain. And A plus
They
B
always
equals
remain.
C all day long. So we've got to have something for those coming behind us to latch onto.
Yes, yes. So speaking of Project 2025, to your understanding, how does that impact LGBTQ plus individuals? What's
Yeah.
at stake?
Well, of course, with the continue, I mean, we're already seeing it on a state level, on a local level, where certain books have been banned that cover um, Black queer topics or just queer topics in general. Anything that is
True.
perceived as gay, lesbian, trans is being taken off shelves in our school libraries, and the next stop, of course, is the public library. And so there is this whole movement to censor who we are as people and to basically
Mm-hmm.
eradicate the queer presence or the minority presence in general from America.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the entire premise of the 2025 project is to turn America into a Christian
A
nation.
Christian
And that
nation.
is not
Yes.
who we are. That is not who we have ever been. Now, let's be clear. I grew up as Christian. However, that is not the premise on which this country was founded. It was founded on the premise of religious freedom, or so I thought. But now people are intending or have been intentionally trying to rewrite the narrative to say that America has always been a Christian nation, and it is not true. Even if we were to go back
Mm.
and we were to look at the phrase "one nation under God" relative to the Pledge of Allegiance, that wasn't put in until the 1950s. So,
Hmm.
so we have to go back, and even the notion of one nation in God we trust
Under
on our
God.
currency, again,
Uh-huh.
that was done in the last 70 years. So, out of a country that's more than 200 and what, almost 50 years old or so, we
Mm-hmm.
have to kind of look and make sure that we examine our the historical precedents that has been set, and not just grab hold to what the popular narrative is. We got to consider that historical narrative, and the historical narrative is that we were not and not we have never been a Christian nation.
Mm. That's something to think about,
Yes.
though. That is something to think about. So, your mission is to be a creative voice that educates, empowers, and entertains communities of color and beyond.
Yes.
How did you start this journey? What was that thing that helped you pull the trigger to start Rethink the Narrative?
So I have to give credit to my wonderful professors in my doctoral program, um, who it was the first time I'd gone through all of these years of schooling, and never really had been able, well, never had really been taught to think. And so my very first class, my professor's name was Dr. William Reynolds. Um, this was the first time that an assignment was given, and we were told to write, and it was not graded per se. And what I
Mm-hmm.
simply mean by that, he was like, I just simply want you to put your thoughts and ideas on this paper and back it up with literature. And if that is the conclusion you have come to relative to your thinking, so be it. And I was like, whoa,
Mm-hmm.
no one had, we always completed schoolwork with the end goal in mind, which was an A in order to pass the
Right.
class. This was the very
Right.
first time I had the freedom to think. And so I began to not only to think, but I began to rethink about what it was I was believing and perceiving. And so as I moved forward, I started to study narrative inquiry and the whole notion of this counter story. We have this traditional narrative that is oftentimes presented before us as the only truth there is.
Mm-hmm.
However, there's also a counter narrative, and there's always a counter narrative because someone else has a story that is different than ours. Someone has a perspective that's different than ours that is just as valid as ours. And
This is
so we
true.
have to consider that counter narrative. And so that's how Rethink the Narrative began, was
I
after my
love that.
quest to think and then rethink about what it was I was believing and perceiving, and to present a different and alternative story.
I feel like I could hear you. I could listen to you talk all day.
Oh Lord, you know
So,
what?
so let me ask you this. Um, Thinking of this upcoming election and Project 2025, and um, before Project 2025 even became
Yeah.
this big theme that we all should know about, there were already rights and issues that impact not only us as people under the LGBTQ plus umbrella, but as brown and black people too. So, what is the importance of this election to you?
Wow. Um, if the election goes the other way, I firmly believe that we will cease to live in a democracy.
Mm,
We will become an autocratic nation, a Christian nationalist nation, um, where all of the gains that have been made over the last, I would say, um, since Plessy versus Ferguson in 1896, even which declared that things were separate but equal, but then with Brown Board of Education and the integration of schools, and then of course the Civil Rights Act of 1964, all of those gains that have been made since that era, I think will be erased. That
mm-hmm,
is the goal. We have seen it now with voting rights, where all of these various states have passed laws to suppress the vote. And the reason for that is because it is very important. They do not want us to vote because they recognize that that we are no longer a nation that we're with a majority white populace. We are
mm,
vastly becoming a more culturally diverse nation, and where Black and Brown people will become or are becoming the majority. And so I think there is an inherent fear that um, the majority, they're afraid that we will do to them what they did to us.
hmm.
And as a result, they're running scared to do everything in their power to retain power. And that's gerrymandering, that is the repealing of rights. Even the whole abortion argument and the repeal of Roe versus Wade has
Mm-hmm,
absolutely nothing to do with women having the right to an abortion. It has everything to do with the fact that the population of the white race is declining. And
mm-hmm.
so they're wanting to do everything in their power to, again, to increase the population so that we will remain and to fuel Christian nationalism and become a white nation again. So yeah,
Interesting.
it has very little to do with that. And then of course, the other rights that, in addition to voting rights, especially for us Black queer people who just gained the right to marry. Um,
True.
what?
True.
Not even a decade ago. I think next year would be a decade, if I'm not mistaken.
It's barely a
Barely a
decade.
decade.
Yes.
Well, um, they're coming for that right too. They set that up in a recent ruling of the Supreme Court. Um, so that right is on the chopping block next, relative to individual freedoms. And so again, and I found it very, very interesting that one of the justices who wrote an opinion that signaled to the fact that they were coming after um, queer rights, if you will, the right to
Mm-hmm,
marriage equality, was one
mm-hmm.
who is married to a white woman. Now, let's be very, very clear. It wasn't until I believe the early 1970s, late 1960s, early 1970s, that it became legal.
For blacks to marry or whites to marry blacks.
So we have to be very, very, very careful when we dig one ditch. We might as well dig two. The first one might be for me, but the second one is definitely for you. So,
Come on now. Come on, Derek. That's so true, though. It's so true. It's so true. What do you think we need to do as a community to help, like, say, for instance, rethink the narrative, or up and coming authors, or people who are trying to help us gain that visibility and have their voices amplified? What should we be doing?
Yeah, I think we need to continue to vote. We need to, number one of the things that we definitely need to do is transmit our history. I do not think that our generation has done a good enough job in teaching the past to the upcoming generation, or the generations behind us. Those who
Hmm.
forget the past are doomed to repeat it, and so therefore a lot of younger people do not know their history, and as a result, we're being set up again to repeat it. So we've got to do that. We've got to transmit the historical knowledge, and we've got to transmit those stories and those values from whence we've come.
Hmm.
Not saying that we should not evolve and grow or be stuck in the past. No, but a lot of times we have to use what we know in order to move forward. We also need to, of
Hmm.
course, to vote. Let's be very, very clear that people died for this right to vote. And if it were not so important, there would not be this move to take it from people of color. And so I remember my grandmother. My grandmother would get off work, and she would come home. And I grew up in the projects in Memphis. And so she would walk over to the rental office, and she would take me with her to the rental office where the voting machines were set up. Okay. And
Uh-huh.
I would sit there and I would watch her vote. So, not voting has never been something that I
And
considered, because it was
yeah,
modeled before me that this is what you do. And even though I was a little guy, I was the only grandchild at that time, and I didn't quite understand why I was going over here with my grandmama to, to watch her vote. It was something that was subconsciously instilled in me. And so we must
got it.
get back to modeling certain behaviors before our youth, in order that they'll adopt the practice, and so that they'll also understand this is why we're doing what we do. We need to be more
Hmm.
active in terms of um, community involvement. I think like never before, and I like never before. I have recognized the importance of being involved on a local level, because
Hmm.
we oftentimes think just national elections, but we never consider, or are we knowledgeable of what's going on in our local community. So
Hmm.
we need to pay attention to local politics just as much as we pay attention to national politics. And so that's something in my young age that I am really, really coming into the knowledge of what's going on locally, because a lot of times that's where the seeds are planted on the local level.
True.
Again, we must also, as a people, as a community, take the um, teaching of our own history back into our own hands.
Hmm.
We must do that, because we cannot rely on public institutions to transmit our culture, our values, our history. It's imperative now. We're in a critical state that these are things that not should be done, they must be done.
Must be
They
done.
must be.
All right. That is so true. And I find myself having these conversations with, like, my nieces and nephews, right now. Like, this is why we're doing this. Like, take a look at what's going on, what's happening. And it's easy to get inside of the bubble, right? Your personal bubble, and not necessarily acknowledge the experience of your neighbor, so to speak. But we all have a piece to place in that puzzle.
Yes.
I like to say. And you know, they're heterosexual, right? They're not gay. So sharing with them what the gay experience is, I think, does help. And also finding those moments where family time, like, yeah, we can play games, we can do this, we can do that, but here's what we're also going to do. We're going to research, we're going to look back at who these magnificent people were that paved the way for us to be able to do what you find so easy to do right now today. So I fully believe what you just said. It does take us educating the younger generation and taking that active approach locally too,
Yes.
because a lot of times um those things that might impact you the most happen at the local level.
And we must get back to that. We must become more aware than we ever have before of what is happening locally, and the concerted efforts of some, and it's not all people. Just like people of color, black people, brown people, are not a monolith. I do not subscribe that to white people or any other race or ethnic group. But there is a concerted effort of some to deny these historical rights and healthcare and some of these other things to people of color. And so I do believe in the Declaration of Independence, and that that there's certain rights are inalienable rights, and that among these are
Mm,
life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And I think that applies to all people, whether you
yes,
black, brown, white, gay, straight, tr-
yes,
bisexual, trisexual, or whatever it is.
whatever.
Whatever. We have these inalienable rights.
Yes, this is true. Wow, wow. So what else can you share with us that you've been working on?
Wow.
I'm sorry. Switching gears.
How about when can I take a nap?
No, you got to schedule those far out in advance, okay?
In addition,
Far out in advance.
right. In addition to working on Artists in the Afternoon, I am in the process of writing again. And again, this current political climate sparked my love for writing again. And
Hmm.
so I'm in the process of writing. I love the self help genre and just giving people
Hmm.
practical steps to do whatever it is that they're going to do. So I'm doing a book on relationships, just practical um, knowledge that I think that we should have as we enter into a relationship, but also if we exit out of a relationship, what are some things that we need to do?
Hmm.
Also,
Hmm.
I am looking at doing a docu series that has to do with recovering from um, hurt, and
Okay.
how we become, or how we become resiliency basically, when it comes to
Hmm.
hurt. So those are two things that have sparked my attention, and that I'm working on in the background. And I'm certain
Got it.
there are a couple other things that are floating around in this brain of mine that we'll get to at some point.
Yeah. Now, you've done a docu-series before though,
I
right?
have. And that
Yes.
docu-series was entitled Q&A, Queer and Authentic. And
Yeah.
we had the opportunity to interview people on various points within the Black queer spectrum. A trans man. We also interviewed someone who is polyamorous. We also interviewed someone who is androgynous. So it was just this wonderful time where we got to learn a lot, or I got to learn a lot, definitely,
Hmm.
about other aspects of the queer spectrum that we sometimes don't think about on a
True.
daily basis because it's not in our wheelhouse. It's not our experience. So therefore, we don't think about it. But it's the
Yeah.
experiences of others. And so even though I cannot empathize with certain things and certain people, I definitely can sympathize when I understand. So when there's a level of
Hmm.
understanding. So it was a whole education within itself for me, and it took me out of my black gay lane, for lack of a better term.
Yes, but that's
Yes,
necessary though. It's necessary because when you really I'm a believer in
yes.
connections, right? And connecting with individuals. And honestly, if you have that will or that passion to help and to make for change, you have to connect to people that are around you, and they may not walk that same lane as you.
Yes,
However, that lane is just as important as yours.
absolutely.
So, so
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I love
Yeah,
that.
we can no longer be silent because it is not our perspective. Because as I said
Right.
earlier, as sure as they're coming for this group,
They're coming
they're
for you.
coming for
Yes. True story. The day before yesterday, I have a neighbor who came and um she wanted to talk about race.
Mhm.
And I was like, "Oh my God, I cannot believe this is happening. This is okay. All right. I can do this. Yes." But she started it off with, "I didn't know that I was so ignorant to what Black people's experience
Mhm.
was. Not that I've had something against Black people or that I didn't know that slavery happened. I know about all these things, but I did not know that there's still these things happening to you and your people, and I feel bad." And I'm like,
Yeah.
"Okay." So a part of me is like, "You know what? We have a certain responsibility to be aware of what's going on." But then the other part is you can't blame someone for, like I said before, operating within their bubble,
Mhm.
because sometimes we're in our experience and you're not aware, you don't acknowledge things that are happening around you because they don't necessarily directly impact you.
Correct.
So we kind of had that whole conversation, and um we talked about a lot, but at the end of it, I I had an appreciation for her because she gave stories about growing up and how there were train tracks in the town, but you couldn't cross, like, all these things. And I think for her in that moment, although we say, "Hey, hi neighbor," and we may have that quick chit chat, if you will, I think that moment signified her being able to cross the
Yeah.
tracks.
Wow.
It's so wild, but yeah,
Wow,
yeah,
that's absolutely amazing, and you're so right. I think sometimes we are afraid to have those uncomfortable conversations,
true.
when it comes to sometimes it does become easier to not address things. But I am so very very happy that I have friends and colleagues who have come to me when they felt like they have done something in error relative to
Hmm.
race and ethnicity, and said, "Hey, did I handle this correctly?" Because that lets me know that you're aware and you're seeking more awareness, and you want to make
Hmm.
sure that you are sensitive to
Hmm.
the experiences of people who don't look like you. And so
Hmm.
I love to have people around me um, who can acknowledge that, hey, I do not know it all. Because
Right,
I'm the first one to say, hey, I don't know it all. I know what I know, but I don't know it all. And if I'm in error,
right.
be kind enough be kind enough to correct me. Um,
Yes,
and,
yes.
and it's all about just simply being open and being aware in this age. That's how we grow. That's how we evolve. And
Hmm.
sometimes we simply don't know what it is we don't know until someone has the courage to call it to our attention.
This is true.
Yes.
This is true. Oh, I love this. I love this. I'm so happy I got this time with you. I am, and I'm sure our viewers are too, because you've really dropped some amazing knowledge and some thought-provoking narratives, I should say, that we should pay attention to. So, how can viewers find you?
You can find me, number one, through my website, and that's rethinkn.com. So that's RETHINK, the letter N.com. Also, you can hit me up on social media, rethinking on threads, formerly in Twitter, formerly known as X. I mean, excuse me, X, formerly known as Twitter.
Right,
I'm trying to go backwards. Um,
right.
and
Oh
Instagram
my
as
God,
well. And so though you can always find me on those platforms and whatnot. And I do have a YouTube channel that currently houses the episodes of Q&A, as well as the panels from previous artists in the afternoon session. So
I love it. Yes, yes, yes. So, okay, a bit of a shady moment,
okay.
and I have to ask. So, in your opinion, and this was said recently, and there have been a lot of people talking about it, but what's an example of a black job, Derek?
Well, number one black job in this day and age is to get out and vote. That is the most important pressing black job there is right now. And that's
Right. But
every person that is 18 years of age and older that is not, unfortunately, not involved in the criminal justice system has a duty and responsibility to go to their black job on election day, and cast and cast their vote. So that is the most important black job I have at this moment.
okay, I love it. That response though, that response was I love it.
So yeah,
That's
that is
that's our number
that's our
one
number one
job.
job right now.
Let's get out and vote.
Let's get out and vote.
So, not too bad of a question, right?
No, I think it's a great question, and again, it goes back to the fact that with my grandmother taking me to vote, and so that is a black job that I remember voting in my very first presidential election,
Hmm.
and I've been voting ever since. I remember
Hmm.
not being upset that I could not vote in the 1992 election because
Hmm.
I had not turned 18 yet, but I wanted to, I
Yeah,
desired to, and
yeah.
so um, as a result, it's been my black job ever since.
Well said. Well said. Thinking back, I remember my first time voting. Um, I had turned 18 that year, and I could not wait. Oh, I was so excited, and I went with my mom and dad, and um, the first thing I noted that there were so many brown people, and I'm from Memphis too, by the way.
Oh,
I'm born and raised in Memphis, so
oh,
we're gonna talk about that in a
okay.
hot second. But but we got out, and I saw all these black and brown people, and I'm like, oh my gosh, like I'm a part of something really, really important right now.
Yes,
And the people are out handing out pamphlets and things like that as
yes.
you walk up to the building. Um, but I remember I say daddy, I remember my daddy saying, well, you can take that information, but here's what's important. Like, here's why we're voting. Here's who we're voting
Yes.
for, and this is why.
Mhm.
Like, and I'm like, okay, well, yeah, hell yeah, all those things are important to me. So yes, I'm gonna do this. Like, I felt so accomplished and so proud. So ever since, it's been something that is important to me and to my household. Like, we're a house of voters, like, period. There's no way around it. Now, if there are issues that we need to have a full discussion around, we have discussion night, like game night discussion night. We have talks and we work through all propaganda
Yes.
that's
Yes.
out there, and I love that. And I really want to encourage people. I know that sometimes having these political discussions in the house can be difficult, or having them with your friends can be difficult, but they are necessary. It might just be a simple misunderstanding, or it might be a false narrative that was
Mhm.
put out that you have the ability to put to rest for that person that you care about.
Yes.
So make those conversations happen,
Yes. It and my thing is, and I got into a, for lack of a better term, a kerfuffle,
A
Disagree-
kerfuffle. Okay.
a disagreement, if you will, with
Okay.
two of my friends from high school. This was a couple of years ago, who voted for 45, and I just simply wanted to know why. I
Mhm.
wasn't trying to argue. I wanted to know at that time, knowing everything that you know, knowing his positions on where women are concerned, where gays are
Mhm.
concerned, where people of color are concerned, what made you? What was the reason? What was the rationale for you casting your vote?
Mhm.
And they could not give me an answer. And they took it as an attack. And it wasn't an attack. It was really my simply wanting to understand. What are
Mhm.
you seeing that
Mhm.
I'm not seeing?
I want to ask you a question on that. Why is it, and I've had that same thing happen too, where I just simply, hey, why did you? Or, you know, what made you support 45? And they get so defensive. And I wonder why that is. Why is it that people who support 45, why are they so defensive and ready to, like,
I wonder, is it that they feel judged for, maybe
yeah.
I think in some people it's this whole notion of, oh, I see what he's doing, but I'm gonna close my eyes. I'm gonna put my hand over my face, and I'm gonna do it
Hmm.
anyway, because I think sometimes some people are feel like that I don't necessarily agree with. I'll say it this way. I think some people are flat out afraid of being accused of being racist, sexist, homophobic, and
Mm-hmm.
misogynistic, and all of those things that he's associated with.
Got it.
Let me not sugarcoat it. I think that's the fear.
Yeah.
That's the fear.
Interesting.
Yeah. That
But then,
I don't see myself through that lens, but
yeah,
do you see me through that lens? Because
right.
I vote.
But then to feel judged or to be afraid of being labeled as one of those things, then that means at some point you would have had to have seen it or gotten a whiff of it from that individual,
Mhm,
from him,
mhm.
like,
Yeah. And we have since those friends and I have since re-engaged. But my thing was, and I said to them, I never stopped loving you.
right.
I didn't get upset and unfriend you or anything of that nature. But it took one of them in particular having an aha moment, personal aha moment, that made them say, you know what? Now I understand what you were trying to
Mm-hmm.
say, why you were asking the question. And I was like,
Mm-hmm.
that's it. Just because we agree to disagree on something doesn't mean that the love that I have for you, that I've had for you for 30 years, stopped. It's just that I
Exactly.
don't understand, and I'm trying to obtain an understanding.
Yes.
That's all.
Oh my goodness. We have to get to a better place. We have to. We have to get leaders. I mean, I know we're all praying for it. I know we're all praying for it. And I'm a believer that good will always triumph over
Yes.
evil. So at some point, we will have that reckoning and we will be led into the right direction. So that's I'm holding on to that, and I'm claiming that the start of that will be with this 2025 presidential election.
I hope so.
So,
I hope so. I love the enthusiasm. I love the joy. I love the hope. It's like joy, hope, and change have come back, roaring
mhm,
back. Whereas
mhm,
it was, I felt, especially after the June debate, I felt this whole sense of gloom and doom. Uh,
yeah,
I was like, oh my God, what's going to happen? And what I'm experiencing now is very reminiscent of 2008 with Obama.
mhm,
That whole
mhm,
sense of hope and again change and
mhm.
yes, and I'm hoping and unity. Let's not forget that
Yes,
unity.
unity.
That we are, and I think Hillary had it right. We're stronger together, um, and I hope that continues. We've had enough divisiveness. We've had enough of that over the last decade. And um, I'm not trying to take your seat at the table. I just want my own, the one that rightfully
Right.
belongs to me. And I want you to have your seat at the table too. So everyone can
Yeah,
have a seat at the table. I just need us to
yeah,
realize it and to work in concert
yes.
with each other.
This is true.
Yeah.
Oh, so Memphis.
Yes.
Because I'm from the projects in Memphis too. So
Okay. what was your claim to fame?
it was Lamar Terrace.
Lamar Terrace, Lamar Gardens.
Do you, you
Yeah.
really interesting? So we weren't that
We were
far,
we were down the street, round the corner from each other.
right? So shout out to Memphis and the projects that were for giving these gifts to the world.
Yeah. No,
Like,
absolutely. I and when I think about our time and a good friend of mine, and I call him actually my little brother, we um, lived diagonally across from each other. My grandmother's unit was diagonally across from his grandmother's unit. And
mhm,
we talk about often the sense of community that we had in those two units that were buildings that were across from each other.
yes,
His grandmother was a prayer warrior, and you
yeah,
could hear her name was Beverly. My mother's name was Beverly, so we called her, of course, her Miss Beverly, and you could hear Miss Beverly praying. And I felt like when we would hear her pray that she was covering all of us were covered. That if you
yes,
if you were outside of these two units right here, you were in danger.
yes.
But her voice was so strong. Her faith was so very strong. And we just that sense of community. I remember um, my grandmother would have me take food to various of the elderly in that area. And I remember vividly her saying to me as I was preparing to take some food down to Miss Willie's house, um, saying to me, "Be careful how you treat old people, because one day you're going to be
Mm,
old." And so it
mm,
was those little nuggets, those little life gems that came from not just my grandmother, but everybody that was around me.
true.
Um,
Yes,
that made me think, that I didn't really appreciate until later on in life. The whole experience. Yes, was it
yeah,
dangerous? Yes. I remember stray bullet. Um, as my uncle was driving home, a stray bullet penetrated his windshield and barely
okay,
missed him. So yes, it had its elements of danger. Yes, but
true.
it also had this resilience and this joy and this sense of community and this notion of um, baby, I didn't do it, but you can. You have an
You can.
opportunity that
Yes,
that we didn't have, and we expect for you to go further and achieve more. So
Yes.
it was that whole notion. And I remember, when someone in that area graduated from high school, we all graduated from high school.
We all agree. Yes. Yeah.
It
Yes.
was pump and circumstance for everybody because that was something that education was emphasized, and it was
Mhm.
emphasized as it was seen as a way out to do better, to go
Mhm.
further, um, and
Yep.
so
It was an example for the
it was
community.
an
Like
example.
for yes. So one graduated, all
All
graduated.
graduated.
I love
All
I
graduated.
love that.
So there's some lessons that I learned and experiences from the Moore Gardens housing project that are priceless and that I take with me
Wow.
everywhere that I go because it is a part of my story. It is a part of my narrative.
Yes.
And I treasure those times. They no longer exist in terms of what they were. They've torn Lamar Terrace down as it was, as well as all
Mhm.
of the housing projects in Memphis. But sometimes I just drive through there, and I can picture in my
Yeah.
mind's eye and
Yeah.
hear and see the sights and sounds. Um,
Oh,
but yeah, grateful for my experiences there.
oh, yes. When you said Memphis, I was like, "Huh, we will have to discuss this." Oh, I love it. All right. So, I know that I've taken up a lot of your time. Um, I'm so thankful for you, what you're doing, and I ask you to please continue to do it. Um, I'm excited to read this piece that you're working on now. So hopefully, once it's there, you'll come back and we can talk about it.
It would be my pleasure,
Yes,
sir. It would be my pleasure.
yes. All right, family. So remember, you can follow Derrick Tennial on oh gosh, I'm still reveling. Okay. But you can follow rethinkn on Instagram. Don't forget the documentary is on YouTube as well, the Q&A documentary that was done before that showcased all those beautiful different examples
Yes.
of humanity, if I'm allowed to say that. And just keep an eye out for what Derek is doing. And don't forget you have Artists in the Afternoon that's happening.
Yeah, I will just want to say again, thanks to thank you, Black Gay Table Talk, for being a part of being a media sponsor this year. We are so excited to have you as a part of the event, and each year we're seeking to make Artists in the Afternoon bigger and better. And so we just thank you for coming and being a part of what we are trying to do in the city. So we appreciate you greatly, and to all of our sponsors this year. We are so grateful to have you on board.
And don't forget Rethinking on Instagram and also on YouTube if you want to follow up and watch that documentary that we discussed. Artists in the Afternoon. Hope to see you there, okay? Take care.